We do what we just.
But the ones who make the meeting longer.
No, we just run through here, all right, and so.
And we are live streaming. We are live streaming, so everyone.
We are live streaming,
Yeah.
and Chair Jones, we may call the meeting to order.
The last meeting we had of this committee, yeah, our company.
We are live streaming.
And recording.
Hello.
That's our
Let
camera
me
right
call to
there.
order our Program Services Committee meeting on Wednesday, October 12th at 1 p.m. at the Sunshine Health Room. We'll have a roll call of our members. Go ahead.
Mr. O'Brien, Ms. McFadden here, Dr. Glenn, Ms. Connor, present, Mr. Jones.
You're present.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We'll now have a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. We'll now have general public comment. There are none, not virtually either. All right. So now we have the review of the draft RFA for capacity building services. Ms. Green.
Yes, thank you, Chair Jones. So you have in front of you and in the packet, the draft RFP for capacity building and technical assistance. This will be what we issue to get one. We expect two or more organizations to help us with the capacity building pieces as defined in the RFP, as well as technical assistance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Holly McPhail, who will take you through very quickly
Very quickly.
pieces and any adjustments that we are going to need to make. Ms. McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So basically the guts of this were already presented at the previous council meeting. And so there were 3 service lines, which is what we've described them as, that we are seeking to fill for services. That includes technical assistance for grant seekers, establishing communities of practice for unselected applicants, and then just general training for the children's services field. That we did discuss that as a response to our summer funding, how we could approach that last time. These are some of the lessons that we learned throughout that summer application process of what we wanted to achieve. What I want to bring your attention to is on the top of page 9, explaining our solicitation process. This will be a managed RFP, meaning we will have an evaluation team as well as a negotiation team, so that we're kind of looking at both of these things simply because we do want to be able to select one or more applicants to fill this. Based on that, you'll kind of, if at the second paragraph, it says that the RFP identifies 3 distinct service provisions in the statement of work, and that respondents are permitted to submit a service proposal for 1, 2, or all 3. That means that we're not requiring everybody who submit a proposal state that they have expertise in all 3 of those service lines, but they could just write to 1. As such, we are suggesting that the evaluation process follow that kind of model, so that how it's broken up and how it's scored will have separate opportunities for pricing, as well as the score for each of how they put their service description forward. I will note that there's one error in the printed copy on page 10. The deadline to submit would not be Tuesday, November 29th. It would be Monday, November 28th. We'll make sure that that the online version has that, and of course, when we present this at
What's the difference?
it's a Monday versus a Tuesday.
What's the difference?
It's a staffing issue because we won't be here on the Tuesday. We'll the entire team will be traveling, and so we to do a public opening, which is required per the RFP policy. Yep.
I get it. Otherwise, I didn't see where it would make a difference.
Exactly. Right. So the one other edit that will be made before this is presented to the full council at the next meeting, should the committee approve it, is that this current version in front of you is missing Form A, which is a standard form that we use in all of our RFPs. It's just not included. It's a disclosure, an affirmation statement that they kind of read through everything and anything that they need to disclose. So I just wanted to make those 2 points out. And then you'll see the evaluation of responses, the criteria. This section is new and was not previously presented before members of the council. That starts on page 15, but that's really.
I'm a little not behind, but I remember us voting on a procurement policy. Does a procurement policy permit points for local preference.
It does, and that is included in the, it's included in the section for, where is it? In their cover, section B, under respondent background experience and references, if you'll see item number 4. Under that section, it talks about minority women and small business enterprise division of the Office
Well,
of
I'm
Economic
looking at
Development.
the scoring here on page 15 that allocates 80 points, and I don't see, where's local preference?
Sure, it's in, so it's not local preference as opposed to minority preference. And it's built into the disclosure and how they score for that top section. So in
So
the
it's contained within the 15 points.
that is
Yes.
correct, yes, sir. And in the evaluation manual that the evaluation team will receive, it's spelled out there.
How do we get to these numbers?
So that's actually, I'm glad that that's where we're going. These are just recommendations that staff have put together, but they are completely up for negotiation and really determination by the council. How we felt in terms of the last piece, which is the quality, clarity, and responsiveness of the service description, that be at least 60% of what we were proposing. And so that's kind of where this point structure came out with as a staff suggestion, but it is completely up to the will of the group for what we put forward for how each of these would be divided.
I don't mind it being included within a particular category as it relates to local preferences. I just think the value should matter more. I'll give you a perfect example. Although the Q&Q team that came to us did a phenomenal job, right? I believe pricing and local preferences, right, should be considered because as we talk about engaging with our local stakeholders, then a firm that comes from outside of this market, if they can also rise to the occasion based upon skills, but I think it doesn't necessarily provide undue advantage because there's a whole lot of areas to be considered. I just think it ought to matter more than just 15 points, along with all of those other considerations, that's all.
So with that, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I just wanted to go on record that I don't think we should give preference to local vendors. I do believe we should give preference to minority vendors. Because I think no matter where they're from, if they use local consultants or what have you, they could, be equally as good. So I, would like to kind of have a little bit more dialogue around that.
Certainly, I just think that for the value that has been ascribed to these projects, the likelihood that there may not be a great deal of subcontracting for an $89,000, a $79,000, or $50,000 contract, they'll probably do all but perform it themselves.
Well, but let's say that somebody who has done this in a Martin County or Pinellas County, where have you, has somebody, I know Holly does consulting for several of these CSCs. So there could be teams like that get put together. And these are people that have a lot of expertise in working with CSCs around the state. And so therefore, that's why I would prefer not to give extra value to local because just because Holly's in Tallahassee, I know she consults for Martin County and some others. And so I would hate, not that she's gonna be able to bid on this. You see what I'm saying? There are other people who have expertise like that and work statewide. And I just don't want to sort of, when they have maybe the most experience, to default them to a lower tier.
But it doesn't necessarily default to a lower tier when you do the evaluation. Holly's criteria, although I might be a local firm in Martin County, she may max out on the 50% by virtue of the quality of her experiences. That's why you include all those different areas and criteria, because where it really, really matters, where you put the greatest amount of points, is the expertise and the strength found therein. And your experiences.
Maybe we should just make that as a note to bring before the full council or take it for a vote here.
Well, I'd rather we take it for a vote here. I just think, I don't want us to advocate the responsibility that lies in this council, then take everything that we will not have decided on to them to decide on. We just present what is our report So if you don't, I like local preferences because I believe in supporting local businesses, particularly when we're using local taxpayer dollars. And if that provides, and what I guess would perhaps make it more palatable, that perhaps, Mr. Fad, if it were more conspicuous, the value of that local preference was 5 or 10 compared to being encapsulated in here. And then you, like, for example, where's price come in?
So I was gonna address that next. We purposely left price out of the scoring because it is a negotiation process, that
So
it will
you're
be
doing your
considered.
ITNs.
Right, so it's similar to the ITM for needs assessment, and so it's more of a managed RFP, in terms of common vernacular of how they're speaking about it now per our legal counsel. So in essence, price is a factor, but because we have a pretty kind of set price of what we want to do, we want to take the score that's best value and then consider price to create that form in determining what gets shortlisted for negotiations. Price is a factor for the evaluation team to consider, but it's not a scored factor. And that is explained under item at the middle of page 16. I will state, and just as a point of clarification, that starting on page 25, you do have a copy of the current CSC Beyond procurement purchasing policy. And when this discussion happened previously last summer, under guiding principles, the third bullet talks about advancing the goals and objectives of the Minority, Women, and Small Business Enterprise Policy of OEB. And that local preference was not included in the procurement policy, but the minority preference was. And I just wanted to point that out, just point of clarification.
No problem. Well, thank you. That suffices. If that's what it says, it refers to the OEB policy, then that's fine.
I don't know if that addresses the issue.
That for me, it does.
It addresses it for me as well.
I had several issues, and I'm sorry if you guys went over some of these in the past, and I'm just gonna ask these quick questions if it's okay. I'm used to at the beginning of these, something sort of saying who's eligible for applying, and I didn't see anything like that, that sort of said nonprofits, for-profits, educational institutions, et cetera. Maybe I missed it. I just kind of wanted to suggest that if it's not in there, we clarify that there's the groups that are eligible to apply.
We can add that under the minimum qualifications of respondents. That's where we've had it in previous iterations before.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I would like it to be as broad as possible. Under the CSC service line 1, technical assistance to grant seekers, I read it that we're limiting it to Leon County providers that would be eligible for technical assistance, which concerns me. If in fact we have an applicant, let's say from Jacksonville, that's going to offer in-home blah, blah, blah. And then it sounds like they're not eligible for technical assistance. So I would like us to make that wording a little broader if possible. Because that would, as we push this RFP out, then, one of the things that I would suggest is maybe even using some terminology around online training. So that if somebody's from Jacksonville and wants to participate in the training, that it's an option, then everything isn't physical, demanding that they come here every time.
So if I may, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So that is under the assumption that we have a company from Jacksonville where
No.
the people are located in
No, this is
Jacksonville?
the technical assistance section to grant seekers.
Right,
And
so.
it says, hold on, let me find the wording.
Oh, and she's in the statement of work, I think. Is that where you are?
Under service line 1, okay, I found it, page 13.
13, yeah, that's right.
So it says techniques for community engagement from all neighborhoods, which makes it sound like the only people that are eligible for technical assistance are people that are in neighborhoods in Leon County.
So for this one,
Well, isn't it?
Hold on, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So in other words, if we were to have a provider that is an investment partner with us, they receive funding from us, and their company is located in Jacksonville.
No, let's assume their company is located in Tallahassee, but the applicants that we're getting to apply for our grants may not all be from Tallahassee. Because it says technical assistance for the grant seekers. Aren't they trying to provide technical assistance to anyone who gets a grant from us?
Yes, but I guess what I'm trying to discern is that assumption that the main people providing the service or the company is in Jacksonville.
No,
So it requires online versus them being located here in Tallahassee, and we can have some sort of in-person interaction.
I would assume whoever it is going to have in-person as well, hopefully it's virtual, but let's assume that it's a Leon County person that, or group that wins it. I'm just saying here it says techniques for community engagement during the assessment process to ensure representation of all programs, providers, and services from all neighborhoods. Makes it sound like if I wanted to apply for a grant from the CSC to expand my services from Jacksonville to Tallahassee, I would not be eligible for technical assistance.
Okay, I don't read it that way, but
I
If we
think
need
I
to
now
make it
see
more
where she's
clear.
going. So can I restate it back to you to see if I understand what you're suggesting is anyone who might be seeking to apply for a grant in the future that wants to expand services from outside of Leon County into Leon County,
this is sounding like,
you feel that the language currently precludes them from being able to participate in the grant seekers.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that we can
You could just
clarify.
strike from all neighborhoods and you're good to go.
And I think that the idea is, and maybe it would be better to say specifically, ultimately, the objective is to ensure that the service providers that are operating in previously underserved neighborhoods have access to this. Like, that's the goal of this. In terms of the targeted intervention. We're not saying it's exclusive to that, but it is targeted to that. So if we're able to tweak that language to reflect that it's not limited, but it's more almost like an including but not limited to type of an approach. Does that make sense?
So let me jump
To me, it seems as if that's an issue of equity. And an equitable distribution of services and technical assistance across the expanse of our community. Is that not what is intended?
yes, I think that I'm kind of going with what Council Member McFadden is saying, because the technical assistance is for the provider, right? It's for the provider. So it would be so any providers that are representing the programs, the providers, and the services across the entire service area.
Correct.
So that's what the technical assistance is for. So I think I absolutely agree with you that if you just strike all neighborhoods, that gets us where we need to be, because any providers, any investment partners should be
Correct.
able
Should
to
be eligible,
participate in
not
this
limited.
technical assistance if they are either one, already providing services with us, or two, want to provide services. So that goes to expanding their business from Jacksonville to into Leon County.
Agreed, but the point of this originally in response to what occurred during the summer was, how do we ensure that during the assessment process, the technical assistance provider is engaging with those typically underserved community providers? That's the specific, like, to ensure that we're getting at least those, and it goes to the equity issue. That was the intent of it.
That's what I thought the phrase all neighborhoods is. It's about inclusion, which is, so I thought that we remedy that with all neighborhoods. And as for any seeker who seeks to expand, I guess I'm lost there. Why is that of any concern to us? When
Because
Well,
you're
let me say
excluding
from the
them
beginning.
Training right now.
Hold on 1 second, if I may. From the beginning, I did not read it the way that Councilmember McFadden read it. I read it and it was intended to simply ensure that we were having representation for those providers that are serving these neighborhoods. That is what we intended. So it could be a way that it's read. If you want us to, we can go back and reword it so that it is very clear that any providers that are looking to target those neighborhoods with their provision are eligible for the technical assistance. But I also don't want us to make it more,
No, it's a tiny tweak.
but now what I'm seeing
Well,
is
it's
your
good.
tweak doesn't address what Councilmember Jones is saying and could change the meaning of what we were trying to do. So that's why I'm suggesting that we could go back and work on that wording, or we could work on that wording before the meeting is over and come back and address it so that we are.
If you want to take out all neighborhoods, take out all neighborhoods. To what end, I do not understand, but I don't want to argue about it. I just think that it is our intent to communicate to our public that we are seeking innovation and ingenuity from grassroots organizations that come from neighborhoods in this community. The example that you use confuses me about someone coming from Jacksonville. I guess that's what confuses me, but if you want to take it out, if you think it confuses us, so be it. We make a motion, it'll fall over now.
I don't know if it's that big of an issue. I think if you guys can,
I think we can work on the language so that we don't lose the equity lens that we really intended for it, but that we're communicating very clearly that any entity wishing to apply for services is eligible for the technical assistance. This piece was specifically for community engagement. One of the required services under this piece is before you come up with a TA plan, that you actually assess the needs of providers. And our goal was specifically those that are serving these typically underserved. What did LaShawn say, or the at-hope neighborhoods? We just want to be very intentional that we're tapping into what are the needs of those providers so that they can be ready to apply for our grants. But I hear you, we have two goals here. Do not lose the equity lens in the assessment process, and make sure that it's communicated very clearly that anyone wishing to seek to apply can take advantage of the technical
And can we
assistance.
provide a notation when we bring this back to the full board,
Yes.
whatever those edits that you make to capture Ms. McFadden's intent and what I believe was the original intent by all neighborhoods, just redline it, we can vote on it as a report coming from the whole. Does that satisfy you, Mr. McFadden? All right. You said you have some other points?
do, sorry.
No problem. Take your time.
So under the methods of data collection and tracking,
Can you give me a page?
Which
reference?
page?
Thank you.
page 13, still service line 1.
Okay.
Are we specifically wanting DEI data collection? Are we if I were on the other end of this, I might want a little bit more example, like e.g., what are we trying to get out of it as an end result? So that, because there's so much data collection and tracking is so broad, are we trying to see how many folks who didn't win a grant last summer win one this summer? Are we trying to, find out how many more folks who are minority vendors apply? I guess if it's supposed to have an equity lens, I'm not sure that this gives me that sense that that's what we're trying to capture.
So we can put examples there.
Yeah, I think that would really help that.
Yeah.
On that same page, service line 2, communities of practice for unselected applicants. Same issue kind of on the outcomes. There's no statement on what we're looking for in outcomes. And again, I just think if we put at an example of, do we want to see that they leverage more additional funds? Do we want to require that those who receive the training have some kind of income growth or revenue growth over that period? What is it again that we're trying to see?
Okay.
For
So
us.
Some of that is mentioned in the statement of work, but I think that we can be more specific here so that when the evaluators are comparing apples to apples of what they submit, that there's a clear.
Yeah, because
connection.
otherwise outcomes could be so
Yeah.
broad.
That's a great point.
Okay, under the same area, service 3, training for children services field. maybe just give me a little bit of background of what that means for children's services field. Does that mean people who aren't applying but are partners?
So this could literally be anybody in the community that has either applied, is a current grantee, or a future grantee, anyone who's in the children's services sector here, in essence, to provide generalized training for our community members, for our community partners. So if you'll recall back, I think it was January, we had a slide at one point at one of the meetings that had like 82 of the providers that provided input to the needs assessment. In essence, any one of them and any others who didn't participate in that, if we host trainings that are hot topic issue areas, maybe that is a DEI training, or maybe that is some other training. I just put that as an example.
No, my only concern with it, one, as I think about our responsibility for the community, I do believe that we are the convener of important conversations. I believe capacity building for potential or already existing providers is important. My only thing is for training for children's services field, I believe that may be somewhat of a misnomer, because I don't want it to communicate that by virtue of going this training for children's services field in some way qualifies or could potentially guarantee your potential inclusion for awards in the future. If we want to be a part of empowering, educating, and equipping providers, I think we've already satisfied that in the other two categories. And perhaps maybe if we wanted to have a third, it would just be a general, or we can. I just wonder the necessity of the third when we're already managing potential as well as already existing respondents in the other two.
So I think the idea was that we want to be able, so if we have an investment partner, maybe not an investment partner, but let's say we have an investment partner, and it is shown that I'm only using DEI because it's the easy one, that they are not cultural competent, that we are able to discover through the evaluation process, through their data, that there's a lack of cultural competency there. And so we want to be able, mandate is the word I would use, for them to go through that type of training that is offered through one of our capacity building providers. And so when I go to page, I think it's page 20, the examples are workplace culture, sustainability planning, board management, those types of trainings. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're feeling maybe we don't need to get into that.
Follow up on
Yeah.
Chair Jones. I have the same concern because I look at what Any does, what Whole Child Leon does, and I worry that we're going to be duplicating things. And I know, for example, Leon County for CHSP required diversity training for all their grantees. Like, so at what, if this section 3 said the training specifically was for groups to learn how to collaborate in the children's services field, I would feel much more comfortable versus it being what I see as an overlap to what the groups here in town already do. And I personally, if I was Any, I would be very nervous with this because, and they didn't win it, let's say, because then all of a sudden we're stealing, like, why go pay the membership fee for Any when that's exactly what they do, is training on these issues.
So you like the training for children's services field?
Only if it's to teach about collaboration and bring the partners together so they learn how to do stronger things. But to your point, I'm not sure that couldn't be put in part 1.
In part 1 or part 2. I just think that our constituencies are found. It's almost as if we're creating, we're creating it's like this, I'm trying to use a sports metaphor. The minor league for human service providers or potential respondents. You either got the money or you applied and didn't get the money. And then if you're not even qualified to even applied yet, then we got this third opportunity to engage you, and I just think that you use your story all the time, because I quote you now, about you got 30 people collecting coats and jackets,
Okay.
when
What
if
else?
everybody just went to the coat and jackets 501c3, you wouldn't need 30 people doing, how many book bags do you get? Everybody is well intended with them, so I would rather if and I'm not saying what, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I may be totally off. Why not undergird what we already have existing? And I don't, help me to see where you wanna, why that's necessary.
So I guess I would need to.
I don't wanna just dismiss it, I just don't see it.
Yeah, okay, so let's say we're looking at those, so if you go back to service line 1, and we were talking about ensuring that we had the kind of equity, we're looking at things through an equity lens. Those particular providers probably can't afford at this point to be a member of any or UPHS.
In line 1, they're your funded, they're your already provider.
In line 1 is anybody that might apply for funding.
Okay.
Right, and so if it's determined that we think they could benefit from this type of training, we wanted to have an avenue to help support that versus telling them, you really need to have DEI training and you gotta figure out how to pay for it. Versus we now have an option where you can get that training, where you can get that board development training, where you can get the various things that may be identified that you need. So the converse to that would be, and this will be a discussion we'll need to have when we get to the not the procurement policy, the investment partner policies that we talk about as far as awarding grants. Do we allow them to claim membership in UPHS or any other agency out there in the world that provides them with this kind of support? And so if we do, then I think I'd be okay taking this away because we allow them to claim that as an expense.
I would recommend we do that, and I have no problem with that.
Can I, before,
Recommend
Hold on one second. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna support where you're going with
Okay.
this, like, give them the option, I wouldn't say it's gotta be any, it could be any, it could be whole child land, I mean, I think there's a lot of membership organizations that can be beneficial depending where you are.
Okay, so this would be my only concern about that, because there is discussion with our local governments that fund two particular agencies, well, one particular in town, so they fund them to do this exact thing.
Exactly.
That's
But
my
then,
concern.
but then, when an agency applies to CHSP, they can then claim the money that they're paying that organization as an expense. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build that in. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, but to your point, and this is where I disagree with you, Ms. McBath. We already have, for example, in my work, I don't do what Family Small Business Development Center does, but I refer people to them.
Mhm.
And all I'm saying is that there's already existing, if we need to make an investment in already existing providers of the services that we're talking about, and we say that they need to strengthen their QuickBooks works, then they need to take advantage of the free services that are already being provided by the Family Small Business Development Center. If they need to bring their businesses up to code, or I don't know what are the barriers that because we're trying to mitigate barriers here, right?
Exactly.
With this $50,000, and I don't know that. we need-
What do you disagree with me? I wasn't sure.
You want to you want the $50,000, I know.
No,
No.
I was also articulating that I am very concerned with this one.
unless
and
it's
I-
different, right?
Unless
Right.
it's different, I was saying do away with it unless you find a way to make it something different.
Okay.
And then hold on, Holly, excuse me, and then on the back end, when we get to the point where we're deciding what can be claimed as expense and what can't be claimed as expense, if I understood you correctly, they can claim as part of their expense memberships in any organizations that provide this type of.
Take that $50,000 and set it aside for memberships.
Or set the $50,000 aside and let's see what we may need it after we will have done a full engagement of activity.
So I think that's where we were going of what, so if I can just jump in, like, what
Yes.
some of the intention behind the types of training, because maybe the examples aren't the best, because we did actually have internally the discussion of paying for membership to join one of those organizations who specializes in helping local programs make applications more effectively, like any PHS. Because that's what they're funded to do. That's why they have membership fees. That's exactly what they do. Whole Child Leon's a little bit different in terms of it's more of a convener and collaborator around issues to solve problems and not necessarily a trainer. For this particular service line, when we've been in meetings before, like facilitated by Whole Child Leon and others that have been at the table, they'll say things like, wouldn't it be great if we could bring this trainer in to do this because that expertise doesn't exist here? If only we had a pot of money that we could tap that could bring in that trainer, to bring in that facilitator, to bring in that, to go back to the original example of DEI, there was our statewide partner, the Florida Alliance of Children's Councils and Trusts, brought in a trainer specifically for all the CSCs to do a series on workplace culture and what that looks like internally. So that was kind of the original of going beyond the existing services, and that there would be some oversight by CSC of what those topics are, and if those trainers are like the qualified trainers, as opposed to grant management, tap this one volunteer. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I see the duplication of service line 3 and the first two. I would, if I may offer a suggestion. I think I'm all for, I mean, others may not agree with this, I'm all for you being flexible and having the wherewithal to be flexible because we've only done a summer's level of engagement. There's other engagement far more massive. We haven't fully analyzed what has been the response to the providers and their first set of deliverables. I would rather that you be flexible with this remaining $50,000 you have there, and then however you would want to identify the needs beyond what, in terms of having impact with our provider community, beyond what we've already done in 1 and 2, then perhaps be flexible to do that. But what you've explained to me thus far, I think it might, and then you may find that what you have already may be good, and then you can use it for something, come back to us and use it for something else. But I don't see, this
So
seems rather duplicative to me.
Okay, so the suggestion would be to strike service line 3.
Correct.
Got it.
I support that.
Okay, so let's strike service line
Yes,
3,
ma'am.
and what we will
Alright.
do is we will adjust the RFP and make it clear that we will have that $50,000, which would still be
Yeah, so you
capacity
just
building
have
and
two.
technical
So you
assistance.
only have 2 RFPs, and you'll hold off for this third potentially.
Hold off on that and
That
have
way
the
you- that way
flexibility.
you still got some gun in your, powder in your belt.
Got it.
Powder in your.
Okay, the next section I wanted to address was the proposed pricing. I found pretty anticipated amount of $76,000 really a little awkward. I was wondering if we could do a range of 50 to 75,000 or 60 to 85 or 60 to 90. I'm a little bit, I mean, then even though price isn't a huge part, people will put that in there because they know it will be part of that decision making. And so I'm agnostic as to what the range is, but you know, if you
But
add
it's not-
89 and 50.
And you're very right, and with these documents being public, I think you ought to just put range.
Put range, got it.
And you know you're not gonna put the range in the RFP, or you are, but that.
If they are, but then
Yeah.
it would not be a specific amount, because
Right.
that's, yeah.
Cause you don't.
Is there a recommendation, Ms. McFadden, on the range for the lines that
I would add 89 and 76, let's see.
Can we defer to them to come up with the range?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
yeah. It's probably gonna be like 60 to 80 or something.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, this one is very minor. if groups apply that are local that already offer training, how do we know that they're not duplicating what they already have and then requesting additional dollars? So,
That's important. I think you need to delineate, they need to delineate that.
I think they've got to list the training they already offer somewhere, because I'm very concerned otherwise that,
They're just getting the money and just.
that's right.
We want something tailor-made.
You can add under both service line
And-
1 and 2, you can
And
add an
that's what they're
actual
already
position so that it says, how is this enhancing what you already do?
Yeah, or,
No,
yeah,
no, no, not that's what they're already doing. Wow, this is entirely different than what they are.
I would really.
We want it to be tailor-made to our constituency and offered only to our constituency, not what they're offering to other served member groups. I want to
I
set
think an easy way to do it might be to suggest that they add an appendix page that just lists all the training that they do currently in that coming year.
and they do that with CHSP.
Yeah.
They, you know, what you already got existing, and so this is tailor-made to us. And subsequently, in terms of what they provide, in terms of the courses, are tailor-made to us. The engagement in the softwares or apps that they create are tailor-made to our constituency. We want to see that this belongs, and we want it to be almost proprietary to CSC.
That's my list for this.
That's your list?
Wait till we get to the next one.
You gotta know.
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No, this is just not my area of expertise, so I'm lending all of that to you all.
no problem, you're good. All right, are we done with this?
Holly, you have any other sections to
Um,
which we need to?
No, we will make sure that those are reflected. Just for the record, I am just gonna kind of just very, very quickly review the edits that will be made. The first one will be under the RFP, page 6, which is in your packets, page 8, under section C, adding in language stating specifically who is eligible to apply for the RFP. The second one would be on RFP, page 8, in your packet, page 10, adjusting the deadline to November 28th from the 29th. The next one would be under service line 1, rewording the verbiage for item 1B, or so that's C1B, to make sure that the equity lens is clear, but that it's not excluding anyone from outside of Leon County, particularly just anybody is eligible to participate.
I don't know who Mr. McFadden knows the check.
We will
Wait for the
You're gonna make it
I'm
work.
totally making that up.
We will also be under service line 1 and 2, under the Ds in both of them, be adding examples to the methods of data collection and tracking, so we're kind of clear about what our expectations are for that. And then adding in one of the attachments for both service line 1 and 2 to direct the respondent to add an appendix listing existing services and training. We will also then,
We got to get, we have to vote on number 6. Because I have a hard fast leave at 2 o'clock for an interview.
Vote on numbers. Oh, on the
Said
agenda.
Development of community investment grants.
that's a conversation.
No, you don't.
So then we'll be striking service line 3 and then making sure that the statement of work reflects all those changes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, number 6.
And we will be under proposed pricing, we will change.
Oh,
that
yes,
to
thank you, the
range.
ranges.
And all
I got
this-
thrown off.
We should
And this
notate
will be
all
the red
changes.
book. And that's
Yes,
right, the
yeah.
red
We
book.
will notate all changes.
Okay.
And did you put the first one about adding everybody that can apply?
Yes, I got that. Mhm.
She ran that off.
All right. And now, so thank you for your feedback on that. A red line version and a clean version will be distributed to the full council.
Version, no, it's just the red line.
Just a red line.
That's what we
Some
wrote.
of our council members have preferences to not see that, so we're just accommodating
what?
all preferences.
Some of the council members want to see the clean version, so we'll have a clean and a red line.
Number 6.
Number 6. So number 6, development of the community investment grants policy. So you'll see a number of attachments. So our current procurement policy is in there on page 25. You'll see guidance from our general counsel on page 35, and you will also see a sample fiscal policy manual from Martin County CSC in which they have information on their community grants. We had a little discussion, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, about how, if there are different procurement policies that we want to put in place for our community partners. And so we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion with this committee before we develop the draft to take it to the full committee. The thing I'd like to bring to your attention, and if we don't have time to do that at this meeting, we will do it at the next meeting. Page 35 is the guidance from the general counsel where he delineates and shows the difference between a subrecipient and a contractor. So to summarize all of this, in his opinion, in their opinion, our investment partners are treated as subrecipients. So that's a little different than a contractor. So a contractor would be like Holly or QQ, or quite frankly, the community investment partners are contractors. Well, no, because
No,
they're
those are
a part of our
subrecipients.
investment policy. So he is saying that you need to be able to delineate between the two because there could be things in your policy that apply to your subrecipients or your investment partners that may not apply or vice versa to your
Okay,
contractors.
let's do this, right, so that we're not confusing ourselves, right? Because what happens is you get overwhelmed in jargon. And we just need to keep it what it is, a contract, you know. And do we have our own list of definitions for our work?
We don't, and we will be creating that.
So that someone gets an award, because I mean, even when we had our last conversation, we were going a ride on comparing RFPs to
IT.
to awardees, right?
Right,
And respondents, right? And
Right.
we use those words interchangeably. So that's my fellow English major, that's a wonderful challenge for us to, you know, to easily remedy, but just we create our own language in our conversation, no different than the school board has a language, the county has a language, and the city has a language. And it can be influenced by that, particularly when we're talking about what is our outward facing relationship with communities. Are they a vendor? Are they a consultant contractor? Are they a grant awardee? And then if they're then as a subrecipient, a person who is contracted under a grant that has already been awarded to us, which then determines the nature of that relationship. So I mean, I guess then why don't we
start with definition.
start with definitions? That comes and then you bring that to us to vote upon, such that then informs our conversation, because our conversation can get confusing.
I would agree. So we will do
And
that.
and clarify, and get the acronyms of the definitions too.
We will do that. So,
You agree, Mr. McCann?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yes, ma'am.
so instead of having a full discussion on this, we will start with defining all of our different relationships.
Right. Which are.
Defining all of our relationships and then use that as our guidance for our
And isn't
policy.
there a committee that deals with bylaws or something like that?
We do have a bylaws.
And so once we could deal with those definitions, then it may require us to go back and look at our policies to make certain that we make those types of, I wouldn't quite call them scrivener errors, but those adjustments in policy to make sure that the language is consistent in our documents, in our RFPs, ITs, whatever we publish, our website is updated to reflect those accepted word choices to define relationships in our work.
Got it.
I think that goes a long way to clarify.
All
What you
right.
say?
I think that's fine.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, what else you got?
So we do not have a next meeting date. We do expect to have
I like
one
the little
in
doodle thing. Did you
December.
try the doodle thing?
Yeah, so I don't know if Jacinta's already sent out the doodle poll. Okay.
Yeah,
So, we do need to schedule 2 meetings for this committee. The next one needs to happen, as long as it happens before December 8th, we'll still be on track for doing all the things that we want to do. And then,
And let me offer this. Can we do a doodle pool for the
Yes.
next? doodle poll for the next one. And then as a part of our work, I know our meeting has to be in relationship with the parent meeting. And you just send us a schedule moving forward for January and beyond.
We
So-
should- hold on. We should be in our office. Once we are in our office, this becomes so much easier because we don't have to
I
jockey.
want to hang my heart upon the willows.
It will, because what we like to do is set standard meetings, but it's been hard because we don't have locations. So we expect to be in our office by January. All of our meetings will be there and we can do exactly that.
Okay.
And just a note for the doodle poll, if I can, I know 4 out of these 5 board members of this committee have said, hey, a little later in the day, maybe?
Okay. Later,
Like
4
p.m.
o'clock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because so they can just switch out of work early versus
I like that idea.
Interrupting the.
versus middle of the day kind of stuff.
So we actually, that was our hope for December and January, but it's Blueprint that ended up dismantling that, and I'm not sure for this committee if that matters, I think it does for you, does it
Yeah.
not? You have to be a
Yeah.
Blueprint meeting, so our goal was the Thursday at 4 before, like the
Do we
week
have to do
before.
Thursdays?
We don't, but we'll do a doodle poll to figure that out.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then we'll figure out what our standard days will be moving forward.
All right. Any final comments?
Don't have anything for the next meeting.
I just have a question. I assume there's a reason that the Martin County information's in here. Did you-
Because they have procurement policies, again, back to the definition. They have contained within their policies for policies that govern awards.
Okay, so I went through all there's a lot, but okay, so
And
just.
it's their whole fiscal manual, but they have a piece in there that details.
Okay,
Have you
Thank
noticed, Mr. McFadden, we've been saying as a board, what are other people doing, so we're not recreating the wheel, looking to.
no, I understand, but I realized that we weren't looking at the entire document, I assume.
The idea behind it though is that they have a published document that their community investment partners have access to, and that so that potential grant seekers know what to expect. So our goal is to get to something like this, but not this
Not this
particular, not necessarily, we're not looking to replicate these rules specifically, but to have a packet like this that we can publish is our goal.
And if it's helpful, when you get to that point, I've done a lot of work with insurance and nonprofits and what they really need or don't need. This is demanding a lot, on some of your smaller ones.
We want to keep it
And I'd be more than
streamlined.
happy behind the scenes to have a conversation with you on that.
Perfect, yeah, we want to keep all of our policies, documents, everything streamlined, so that it's not full. So with that, Chair Jones, you can officially.
I move we adjourn.
Nicely run.